Every 65 seconds, someone in the United States is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Every 65 seconds. Right now, 6.7 million Americans are living with it. And here's the part that nobody talks about. Most of them had no idea it was coming. They thought the occasional forgetfulness was just aging. They thought it would stay small. They thought they had time. And then one day, they couldn't remember their daughter's name. I want to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with yourself. Have you ever walked into a room and completely forgotten why you went there? Have you ever been in the middle of a sentence and the word you needed just vanished? Have you ever looked at someone you've known for years and had to quietly remind yourself of their name? If you answered yes to any of those, you are not alone. And more importantly, you are not helpless. Because what science has discovered in the last 2 decades about preventing dementia is nothing short of extraordinary. And the number one thing that doctors, neurologists, and Alzheimer's researchers all agree on, the single most powerful action you can take after 60 to protect your brain, is something you can start doing tomorrow morning. It is not a prescription drug. It is not an expensive supplement. It doesn't require a doctor's visit or a special membership. And by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what it is, exactly why it works, exactly how much you need, and exactly how to do it in a way that gives your brain the maximum possible protection. So stay with me, because what we are about to talk about may be the most important 35 minutes you spend this year. Let's start with what is actually happening inside your brain after 60, because once you understand this, everything else will make complete sense. Your brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons. These neurons communicate with each other through connections called synapses, and your entire ability to think, remember, feel, and function depends on how well these connections work. When you're young, these connections are fast, strong, and constantly forming new pathways. Learning new things is relatively easy. Memory is sharp. The brain is highly efficient. But after 60, something changes, and this is not just opinion. This is well documented in the medical literature. The brain begins producing higher levels of a protein called beta amyloid. Under normal circumstances, your brain produces and clears this protein as part of its regular maintenance. But as we age, the clearance process slows down. The beta amyloid starts to accumulate, and when it does, it clumps together into what scientists call amyloid plaques. These plaques act like interference. They disrupt the signals passing between neurons. They trigger inflammation in the surrounding brain tissue, and they initiate a cascade of damage that, over time, causes neurons to stop functioning and eventually die. At the same time, a second protein called tau begins to behave abnormally. Tau's normal job is to act like scaffolding. It supports the internal structure of neurons, helping them maintain their shape and transport nutrients. But in aging brains, tau can become chemically modified and start to twist into what researchers call neurofibrillary tangles. These tangles literally strangle neurons from the inside. Amyloid plaques and tau tangles together. These are the defining biological features of Alzheimer's disease. They were first described by German physician Dr. Alois Alzheimer in 1906, and every major piece of research in the century since has built on that foundation. Now here is the piece of information that I think is most important, and most people never hear this. This process, the accumulation of plaques and tangles, begins 15 to 20 years before any symptoms appear. That finding comes from a series of landmark studies, including research published in the journal Lancet Neurology and work done through the Dominantly Inherited Alzheimer Network, a global research consortium studying early Alzheimer's development. What this means practically is this. If you are 65 years old today and you develop noticeable memory problems at 80, the underlying brain damage likely began when you were in your mid to late 40s. The symptoms are the last chapter. The story started decades earlier. And this is why, if you are watching this video and you are in your 60s or 70s, right now is not too late. But right now is the time. Not next year. Not after the next checkup. Now. Because here is the other side of that same science. Your brain is not a passive victim. It has a remarkable capacity, proven repeatedly in peer-reviewed research, to fight back against this damage, to form new connections, to strengthen existing pathways, and to build what neuroscientists call cognitive reserve, a biological buffer that can delay, reduce, and in some cases prevent the clinical expression of dementia even when some degree of underlying damage exists. And the most powerful way to build that reserve? That is exactly what we are going to talk about now. The answer is aerobic exercise. I know, you have heard that exercise is good for you more times than you can count. But I am asking you to set aside everything you think you know about that statement for the next few minutes. Because what the research actually shows about exercise and the aging brain goes so far beyond general health advice that it genuinely changes the conversation. When you engage in aerobic exercise, any sustained physical activity that elevates your heart rate to a moderate level, your brain responds by producing a protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. BDNF is not a wellness concept. It is a specific, measurable biological compound that has been studied extensively in human clinical trials and animal models for more than 3 decades. It was first identified by researchers in the early 1980s, and its role in brain health has been confirmed in hundreds of peer-reviewed publications. Dr. John Ratey, a clinical associate professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School and the author of the book Spark, which is based entirely on the neuroscience of exercise and the brain, has described BDNF as Miracle-Gro for the brain. Here is what BDNF actually does, specifically. It stimulates the production of new neurons, a process called neurogenesis. For a long time, scientists believed that adult humans could not grow new brain cells. We now know definitively that this is wrong. Neurogenesis continues throughout life, and BDNF is one of its primary drivers. BDNF strengthens the synaptic connections between existing neurons, making communication faster and more reliable. BDNF promotes the survival of neurons that are under stress or threat from inflammation and oxidative damage. And most directly relevant to dementia prevention, BDNF has been shown to promote the clearance of amyloid beta from brain tissue and to increase the volume of the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the region of the brain most central to memory formation and spatial navigation. It is also one of the first regions damaged by Alzheimer's disease, and it is one of the most responsive regions to aerobic exercise. In 2011, researchers at the University of Pittsburgh conducted a randomized controlled trial, considered the gold standard of medical research, in which 120 older adults were divided into 2 groups. One group did moderate aerobic walking for 1 year. The other group did stretching only. At the end of the year, brain scans showed that the aerobic exercise group had experienced a 2% increase in hippocampal volume. The stretching group showed the typical age-related shrinkage of about 1.4%. A 2% increase may sound small, but consider this. The hippocampus normally shrinks by 1 to 2% every year after 60. So 1 year of moderate walking effectively reversed 1 to 2 years of age-related brain shrinkage. This study, published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, is one of the most cited pieces of research in the field of neuroscience. It was not an outlier. It has been replicated and confirmed by multiple subsequent studies. A 25-year longitudinal study following 1,462 adults over the course of their lives, published in the Journal of Internal Medicine, found that people who exercised regularly had a 32% lower risk of developing dementia compared to those who were sedentary. Among those who maintained consistent exercise into older age, the risk reduction was even greater. A comprehensive review published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine in 2020, which analyzed data from over 195,000 participants across dozens of independent studies, concluded that physical inactivity is one of the most significant modifiable risk factors for Alzheimer's disease, accounting for an estimated 21% of cases worldwide. Meaning that if everyone who is currently sedentary became regularly active, roughly 1 in 5 cases of Alzheimer's disease globally could potentially be prevented. These are not small numbers. These are not preliminary findings. These are the studies that have shaped the official recommendations of the Alzheimer's Association, the American Academy of Neurology, and the World Health Organization. The science on this is as settled as science gets. Now I want to talk about something that most videos and most articles on this topic completely miss, and it is the reason that many seniors who do exercise regularly still fail to get the full brain protection the research promises. The mistake is doing the same exercise, the same way, at the same intensity, every single day. Let me explain why this matters, because the biology here is genuinely important. Your brain has a built-in efficiency system. When you repeat the same physical routine day after day, your brain learns to automate it. The neural pathways involved become so well established that the brain can execute the movement with minimal active processing required. And when the brain is operating on autopilot, BDNF production drops. The stimulus that triggers neurogenesis and synaptic strengthening is reduced. The protective benefit is significantly diminished. What the research shows is that the brain responds most powerfully to exercise that is physically demanding and cognitively novel, meaning it requires active attention, coordination, learning, or adaptation. A 2018 study from the University of Illinois, published in Neurobiology of Learning and Memory, directly compared the effects of exercise alone versus exercise combined with cognitive engagement in older adults. The group that exercised while also engaging their brains showed significantly greater improvements in working memory, processing speed, and executive function. And then there is the landmark New England Journal of Medicine study, a 21-year prospective study of 469 adults over age 75, published in 2003, which examined the relationship between leisure activities and dementia risk. Of all the physical activities studied, dancing showed the greatest protective effect, a 76% reduction in dementia risk. Not 20%, not 30%, 76%. Higher than any other single physical activity. Higher than swimming. Higher than golf. Higher than tennis. Why? Because dancing uniquely combines aerobic physical activity with real-time decision-making, memorization of patterns and sequences, rhythmic coordination, and social engagement. It activates multiple brain regions simultaneously. It is, from a neurological standpoint, one of the most complete brain workouts that exists. Now, I am not saying you need to become a ballroom dancer, but I am saying that the principle matters. The best exercise for your brain after 60 is exercise that also challenges your brain. Let me give you the specific activities that the research most consistently supports. Dancing, any style. Ballroom, line dancing, salsa, folk dancing, even dancing in your living room to music you love. If you are learning new steps, the benefit is even greater. The social element, if you are dancing with others, adds an additional layer of protection that we will talk about shortly. Swimming. The rhythmic breathing pattern required in swimming, combined with the full body coordination and the meditative focus it demands, makes it one of the most effective brain exercises available. A 2020 study published in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health found that regular swimming was associated with significantly better cognitive function in adults over 60. And it is extraordinarily gentle on aging joints, one of the most accessible forms of aerobic exercise for seniors with mobility limitations. Walking with intentional variation. Not the same route, the same pace, the same distance every single day. Vary your route. Include hills if you can. Change your speed. Walk backwards for short intervals, which research has shown forces greater cognitive engagement and actually improves memory consolidation. Count backwards from 300 while you walk. Name every red thing you can see. These additions keep the brain actively processing rather than operating on autopilot. Tai Chi. This deserves special mention because the evidence base for Tai Chi and cognitive protection in older adults is substantial and growing. A systematic review and meta-analysis published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease in 2014, examining data from 2,553 participants across multiple randomized controlled trials, found that regular Tai Chi practice significantly improved cognitive function in older adults and was associated with reduced risk of mild cognitive impairment, often a precursor to Alzheimer's. Tai Chi is particularly valuable for seniors with balance concerns, joint pain, or limited cardiovascular capacity because it delivers meaningful neurological benefit at low physical intensity. Cycling, whether outdoors or on a stationary bike. Cycling is highly effective at producing BDNF because it can be sustained for extended periods at moderate intensity, and it involves continuous motor coordination. Stationary cycling is especially useful because it eliminates fall risk while preserving almost all of the neurological benefit. How much do you actually need to do? This is the question I get most often, and I want to give you a precise answer grounded in the research rather than a vague more is better. The current recommendation from the Alzheimer's Association, aligned with guidelines from the American Heart Association and the World Health Organization, is 150 minutes of moderate-intensity aerobic activity per week for meaningful brain health benefit. 150 minutes. Across 7 days. That is 21 minutes per day, or 5 30-minute sessions per week, or 3 50-minute sessions. The distribution matters less than the total weekly volume and the consistency over time. Moderate intensity means your heart rate is elevated, but you can still hold a conversation. You are slightly breathless, but not gasping. This is sometimes called the talk test in exercise science, and it is a reliable and practical guide. Now I want to address something directly, because I know many of you watching this have real physical limitations. Bad knees, arthritis, a history of falls, a heart condition, joint replacements, the very real fear of injuring yourself. Here is what the research shows about getting started from a low baseline. A 2019 study published in JAMA Internal Medicine found that even 10-minute bouts of light to moderate activity, 3 times throughout the day, produced measurable improvements in cognitive function in adults over 60 within 12 weeks. 10 minutes, 3 times a day. That is entirely achievable for the vast majority of people regardless of fitness level. Chair-based aerobic exercise, movements done while seated including arm circles, seated marching, and chair-based dance movements, has been shown in multiple studies to produce meaningful elevations in BDNF, particularly in seniors with significant mobility limitations. The research is clear. The threshold for neurological benefit is not high. What matters is that the heart rate rises moderately and is sustained for at least 10 continuous minutes. Water aerobics is another excellent option. The buoyancy of water reduces joint stress dramatically, while the resistance of water increases cardiovascular and muscular engagement. Multiple studies have found water-based exercise to be particularly effective for older adults who find land-based activity painful or difficult. And one specific finding I want to share because I think it will be practically useful for many of you. Several studies, including a 2019 paper published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine, have found that morning exercise produces higher BDNF elevations than the same exercise performed later in the day, potentially because cortisol levels, which interact with BDNF production, follow a natural morning peak. A morning walk, if your health and schedule allow it, may deliver more neurological benefit than the same walk taken in the evening. As always, please speak with your own physician before beginning or significantly changing an exercise program, especially if you have cardiovascular disease, diabetes, osteoporosis, or recent joint surgery. Your doctor can help you identify the right type, intensity, and starting point for your specific health situation. Exercise is the single most powerful intervention. The evidence on that is clear and consistent. But I want to give you the complete picture because 3 other factors have strong, independent scientific evidence and work powerfully alongside physical activity. The first is sleep. In 2013, researchers at the University of Rochester Medical Center published a paper in the journal Science that described a previously unknown system in the brain called the glymphatic system. During deep sleep, channels around blood vessels in the brain expand significantly, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to flow through brain tissue and flush out metabolic waste, including amyloid beta proteins. Think of it as the brain's overnight cleaning cycle. While you sleep, the brain is literally washing itself. A 2017 study published in Nature Communications found that even a single night of sleep deprivation in healthy adults caused a measurable increase in amyloid beta accumulation in the brain, detectable on PET scan imaging the following morning. Chronic poor sleep, defined in the research as consistently getting fewer than 6 hours per night, has been associated in multiple longitudinal studies with significantly elevated risk of Alzheimer's disease. A 2021 study published in Nature Communications, which followed nearly 8,000 adults over 25 years, found that people who consistently slept 6 hours or less per night at age 50, 60, and 70 had a 30% greater risk of developing dementia compared to those who slept 7 hours. 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep is not a lifestyle preference. It is a neurological necessity. And the good news is that regular aerobic exercise is one of the most well-documented, non-pharmaceutical methods for improving both sleep duration and sleep quality in older adults. The second factor is social connection. In 2023, U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy issued a formal advisory declaring loneliness and social isolation a public health crisis in America, citing extensive evidence of its effects on physical and cognitive health. The link between chronic social isolation and dementia risk is well established. A meta-analysis published in Aging Research Reviews, which pooled data from 99 studies involving more than 1.2 million older adults, found that social isolation was associated with a 50% increased risk of dementia. The biological mechanism appears to involve neuroinflammation. Chronic loneliness is associated with elevated levels of inflammatory markers, including interleukin-6 and C-reactive protein, and neuroinflammation is now understood by researchers to be a major driver of Alzheimer's pathology and neuronal death. Staying socially connected is not just emotionally beneficial. It is neurologically protective. Regular, meaningful social interaction, whether that is dinner with family, a church group, a walking club, a volunteer commitment, or weekly calls with close friends, appears to have measurable protective effects on brain health independent of other lifestyle factors. This is also one of the reasons dancing shows such extraordinary results in the dementia research. It is not only the physical activity. It is the combination of physical activity, cognitive engagement, and social connection, all delivered simultaneously. The third factor is purpose. Dr. Patricia Boyle and colleagues at Rush University Medical Center conducted a study published in the Archives of General Psychiatry that followed 9. Let me bring everything together. Your brain after 60 is not passively declining toward an inevitable outcome. It is adaptable, responsive, and capable of building genuine protection against dementia, but it requires the right inputs. The number one thing, the thing with the strongest, most consistent, most replicated evidence base, is aerobic exercise. Move your body in a way that raises your heart rate to moderate intensity for at least 150 minutes per week, with variety and cognitive engagement built into the activity. Dance, swim, walk new routes, practice Tai Chi cycle. Whatever form you can sustain consistently, that is the right form for you. Start where you are. 10 minutes, 3 times a day if that is where you begin. The research supports it. Every deposit counts. Pair that with 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Stay connected to friends, to family, to community. Find work that gives your days meaning and purpose. Dr. Rudolph Tanzi of Harvard Medical School, one of the world's foremost Alzheimer's researchers who has spent more than 30 years studying the genetics and biology of this disease, has said this: "The lifestyle choices you make today are the most powerful medicine we currently have against Alzheimer's disease. Not a drug in development, not a treatment not yet approved. The choices available to you right now, today, are the most powerful tool that currently exists. You are building your brain every single day. The choices you make this week, this month, this year, they matter in ways that are real, measurable, and documented in the medical literature." I believe you came to this video because some part of you already knew that, and I hope what you leave with today is not just information, but the genuine conviction that this is worth doing, that your brain is worth fighting for. Now, what is one thing from today that you are going to start this week? Leave it in the comments. I read every single one. If this video was helpful to you, please share it with someone you love. This information deserves to reach as many people as possible. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next one.